Okay, I guess we'll get started. I think everybody knows me, Chris Pulver. I'm part of the North Ogden City Council, and I was asked by the mayor to kick off this new season, 2024 Citizen Budget Subcommittee, I think we're technically called. So basically what I want to try to do today, I mean, we'll go through the agenda, but we'll go as follows through the agenda, and then we'll kind of we'll meet each other, meet and greet, and kind of go through some training, figure out what we want to do for the future. This is kind of a really loose. We need to come up with a committee chair, how we want to do minutes. That's just an overall thing. So I guess, let's see. What do we have to do? Any volunteers to do a fire prayer? You know, lead and pledge allegiance.
Oh, well,
Okay.
my thought is, don't we live in a great place?
Yes.
No, seriously,
It's true.
we really do. I mean, if you watch the news, you see turmoil everywhere. We live in a great community. We really do. We have our issues. But we live in an amazing place, in an amazing state, in an amazing country. And I think we're blessed to be where we are.
Amen.
If you'll stand with me and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. So I guess how we want to do it, I guess the biggest thing right now is to maybe just go through the charter, which I kind of gave you a copy of, and I don't know if John can put it up behind us, but for those that don't have a copy, but and this is something you can, I sent it out to everybody email wise, so we don't have to ponder too much on it, but if we do have some comments and overall things that we should fix right now, let me know and I'll scribble on here. So let's just go over it, might as well. So basically, I called it a charter, and I know we were talking about different things, but I thought that's kind of a little bit more broad and has more, doesn't have as much of a impact. I think it's kind of and I went through mission, meeting decorum, and community documentation, just trying to, from an engineering standpoint, that to me, you know, captured all the things. So if anybody has any other thoughts they want to stick on there, my idea right now is, as opposed to last year, just as a point of reference, they dug deep into each department not excessively, to a point that, you know, we were chatting about some very detailed down, not pennies, but dollars. And it was it's a good scrub. I think I learned a lot about how the city handles things. And I don't know if that would help everybody here or the city in general to do that again. I think that some of the training we'll go through today, the ancillary documents in here kind of show you what all of the other departments do. And if you want to, we can discuss anything we want to. You know, so I think, you know, when we decide on who's the chair, we can kind of make sure that we, you know, don't scroll in too many different locations at once. But from the aspect of what is out of bounds, nothing's out of bounds. You know, I think that's the key thing from the council's point of view, is that we want different perspectives, different people's thoughts on this whole mess. And I say mess sometimes, but because Jamie's basically holding, what are they, herding cats? Is that a good example? Almost every year, it's like, okay, we have the same thing, but it's different. Oh, that's nice. But, and you have a whole bunch of different things that, you know, cost escalation that somehow has to be taken care of, you know, new plows, all that stuff has to go being figured out. At the same time, the city is growing. So how do you know, and that's kind of what I was thinking in the future is, and there's charts and stuff that she went through a couple of, was it 2 meetings ago? We went through the budget to make sure that,
Sorry about that.
make sure you sign.
I know, I was gonna go do that.
But, it kind of shows the out years where the city has plans for certain things, expenditures, some big events, expansion of Washington, fixing 1700, you know, all these different things. And I think that's what this committee this year should focus on, is how kind of grappling with that, because at some point we have to decide where stuff has to come out of, really cost-wise. So that's kind of the mission. I kind of grappled with that and to maybe, because basically the bottom line is what the outcome of this committee should be is an outbrief to city council. And that last bullet there in the mission statement, because when I designed the briefing, I used my wife as a sounding board, I guess is the question, or the words. The problem is that even when you do pretty well on it, by the third slide, she was bored and wanted, she was off. And I was like, well, that doesn't serve a purpose, so I don't know how to do that. And I leave that, guys, to some of you folks, but it's going to be an interesting task because trying to explain some of the city stuff to, I say John King public, but to my wife, for example, is going to be the ultimate task. And without getting them bored by the third briefing chair. Anyway, so that's kind of why I stuck that bullet in there. Meeting decorum, I think this is, obviously self-evident, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody, everybody has their opinions, some heated, some not, but I think in the retrospect for some of the other stuff that I've been through, respect and dignity is kind of the biggest thing. You can agree to disagree, and then we can move on because, from an aspect of what the final recommendations are going to be, it's going to be a simple majority. I mean, last year I remember, there were some certain things that I didn't agree to, but it goes in. And a hand is raised. That's a good.
A hand is raised because I would like clarification on how whoever or all of us would like to be recognized if they have something to say.
I think what you just did.
Okay, then I have a question. Then I gotta find it. Okay, actually, it's back in the mission. I have something that kind of is just a little, the last bullet point, ensure any findings, plans are explained in a simple, basic manner to the general citizenry. Can we kind of word that so we're not calling them a bunch of dummies?
Any way you'd like to say.
Well, I had a thought in my mind. How about in, help me guys, what's a good word
I
for,
don't know, but I know what you're saying. I'm gonna think about it.
So sometimes they'll say common language or
Plain language.
layman's terms,
yeah. I
plain
like-
language, yeah.
Yes, I like that. Does that sound better to you guys?
Yeah.
You're not allowed to talk? Why? I don't know. Oh, okay.
So explain it in layman terms.
Yeah, that are explained in layman terms to the general citizenry. I think it sounds better than simple and basic.
That's the definition of layman's term.
But it sounds better.
That's fine. I have no ownership on this. This is
What if we just say explained in a manner,
that Chris's wife can
the
understand.
general citizenry?
In general terms.
Yes, something.
That's good.
General terms.
I don't think we need to.
I think it's
Is
fine.
that okay? General?
Sure, done. Then, well, general terms, I keep across. Okay. Free flow of ideas, I'm bouncing around. I tend to squirrel, so that's why I was thinking I'm not a good chairperson, but anyway, yeah, so person that will kind of elect as the chair will be conduct the meeting, obviously. Specific topics come up on the agenda so that we don't get, squirreling all over the place. And simple majority, and Susan pointed out, I'm like, did you just make something even so you can't have something? I'm like, yeah, maybe, but I think everybody's not gonna show up at once. I mean, I'd really have a, and maybe we'll have Brenda or Doug be the, deciding factor.
Yeah, that was kind of an issue I had. If we're gonna vote on something and we have an even number of people, somebody needs to maybe be a deadlock. Something to think about anyway. Break a deadlock.
Chair?
Yeah.
One question I had on the simple majority, is that the simple majority of those present at the meeting? or a simple majority of the committee as a whole.
Whoever's-
And the reason I ask is that if we have 3 people that show up at a committee meeting and a large issue is being raised, and 2 say, yes, we want to do that, and 1 doesn't, it's not really representative of the committee as a whole.
Do you want to define a quorum for the?
Well, and then we get complicated,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
That's a good question, and I think. I don't want to complicate things too much, but I don't think you'd have a meeting with 3 people, but that's just my opinion.
I have a suggestion, that just,
Think, yeah,
when we talk about a majority and a majority.
How many people are on the committee?
8 plus 2. 2 are kind of consultants, have did this all last year, and, you know.
Okay, so how many voting? members?
Say, should we say 8, and then the 2 can be the deciding? If they're both here, I don't know. I guess.
Well, then you might end up with another even number again.
Brenda's the time, okay, you have to be here every time.
As best I can, I know.
I know, that's what you said, she's best effort, so. I think if we hit that, we'll address it, I don't know how much we'll hit that, but who knows? But the mayor be the time. Anyway. Okay, so yeah, agenda minutes, I think, one of the big things there is that I don't make this complicated, I don't want to give city staff, I think the whoever's willing to raise their hand right now, because it's a summary, I don't want to make it complicated, any big decisions made, you know, like for what we've talked about so far, talked about the charter, made a couple corrections, I mean, stuff like that, is that something anybody would want to sign up for? I mean, if not, I can do this. We get.
I would love to, but you do it.
See, I knew this.
I second that.
Oh,
I'm like,
It's a gang up motion already.
You were just voluntold.
I speak German.
you would be great at it.
All right, all
If
right.
you don't, just keep it simple, this isn't,
Me?
I know, sorry, did I roll my eyes too hard?
Okay, I will summarize to the best of my ability.
Okay. And if you need help, just yell, that's not a big deal.
Oh, you know I will. I have you on speed dial now.
And then the last thing is obviously documentation is the briefings and the community meetings of the city council. Okay, any other thoughts, recommendations that we need to hammer this out? So I think this will be, you know, something we mull on, and if something goes crazy, then I go, well, we should really go back. Speak about it, we can finalize next meeting, how about that? Okay. What was next?
Bless you.
Training, good, awesome.
Can I ask a question?
I don't know, Katie?
I don't know,
Yes,
why are you going? How formal, thank you.
no, it's just,
Is there going to be, I mean, you've got 8 people on the committee, you've got 2 that are not here today. Is there going to be a number of meetings that they need to come to in order to have a vote?
that's I mean, last year we had one person I think came in. So it's a volunteer committee. People have signed up to do it. I know there's circumstances beyond, you know, people's control. And I don't want to say, if you don't show up for 2 in a row, then you're off. You know, what's your thoughts? I mean,
Well, my thoughts are, this is, I don't know how you're doing it different this year, but this is an overwhelming amount of information. And if you miss very many meetings, you're not gonna have any idea what's being talked about in order to have an opinion on it.
don't disagree. Does anybody got a thought on that? I mean, how you want to handle absenteeism?
Well, what about,
I'll look at it.
I know, but I wanted to do it properly. What about if somebody's in a real dire situation? Could they Zoom in to be able to
What did we decide
participate,
on
or
that?
do we have Zoom capabilities for this particular?
Yeah, we could have any of the committee or the subcommittee members be a Zoom panelist, which would allow you to speak as you wanted to. It wouldn't require me clicking on and off or
I
anything
kind
like
of
that.
like when Ryan was on.
Yeah.
Last night.
Okay,
What do you
I
guys
think
think
that's
about
great.
that?
yeah.
Just
Maybe
make
that
it
works.
St. George part-time.
Okay, so, but if you miss 2 actual meetings and 2 Zoom meetings or whatever, then do you think adios?
I don't think we should say ADOs and just maybe question the voting based on what we're voting on. I think that's maybe a bigger issue.
You don't feel
That they've
comfortable
been part of the
voting.
discussion.
Yeah, if you
to
don't feel
understand it.
comfortable voting because you don't know the information, you can abstain from the vote.
Yeah,
That doesn't, mean
Yeah.
you still can't, have an input on other things,
okay. I just want to make sure I get it in the minutes properly.
don't you think?
Yeah.
If somebody's missed quite a few and they don't feel comfortable with voting, then they should speak out and say, I don't feel comfortable with this.
Jamie's got something. What's up?
How often do you guys plan on?
I was thinking every other week for now. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to go through and we'll have little, I don't know, I think we should have little assignments, after this to say, hey, go and read this, because you got the budget out on the internet, you have the audit out on the internet. There's a lot of detail that are out there for people that, if they want to, can do without being here. In fact, I would highly advise both of those to look at both the budget, full budget for this coming year or past year. And then also the financial statement that was completed December, and then they just signed off on it 2 weeks ago. What's today?
When,
Several weeks ago.
So if this is out on the internet,
Right, if you go to the webpage, the city webpage and go to departments and the finance, it's right there, right?
and is it the 2024? Is that what we're looking at, or the 20?
Whatever
So
the,
your fiscal year is still is
We're
October.
finishing 2024.
but the audit, I think, was completed in December, so.
so city is on fiscal rather than calendar,
Correct, yeah, it's, one,
September,
October 1 to September.
no, it starts in July.
Is it July? Okay.
July to June.
okay, thank you.
So the budget that you'll be talking about is 2024 to 2025. July 1, 24 to June 30, 25.
And both of the documents Chris mentioned, the audit and the budget for the current year, are the top of the list of those on their respective pages. One's on the financial statements, that's where the audit is, and the other one's on the budget page.
Who does the audit?
McDougal,
Right now, it's Gilbert and Stewart.
oh, sorry, yeah, that's state audit. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he does it too.
I failed to go around the horn here because we don't know each other. I mean, I think some of us know each other, but the full, if you want to do that and take 2 seconds, several minutes to do that, I think that might help, just for background purposes.
Depends on what you want to know.
Well, why you're here for first starters. So I mean, honestly, background, I'll start just, I've been part of the military and then part of, coming out here, part of the rocket motor, production since '96. Worked up at Promontory, I worked on base for a while, right now I cover, there's a Northrop plant in Magna, at the Freeport Center, and then obviously Promontory still. So I go and do all that stuff for the Missile Defense Agency, which nobody knows what that is, but it actually is the defensive arm that protects the United States from incoming ICBMs. So that's what I do, and I was part of Northrop. I was in charge of a program, and so there's a whole bunch of earned value management system. Yeah, you were up in Northrop, so you know what I'm talking about. It's a nightmare, and thankfully it's not as bad as what the city does. The city does have certain colors of money is what I call it from the government stuff that they can only use in certain parts and they can't commingle. So that's how I understand it, and Jamie will go over that. So that's kind of my background and why the mayor's like, oh, you should do something this cost. Okay. So, and I actually can read a financial statement and I can read the budget. So that's half the battle, right? So anyway, Chris, go ahead.
Chris McIntyre, moved to North Ogden just almost 8 years ago. Spent 20 years in West Haven. From a career perspective, I started out years ago as an IBM customer engineer, going out and working with all things back in the day, so electric generators, it's advanced in the systems and maintain stuff out at, the airport and Delta, and if you can name it, I've been there and worked on it for years. Left IBM, went to work for Ottawa, put in my first, enterprise research system, which at the time they told me was gonna be about 400 people. And 5 years later, I had 19,000 named users and about 22,000. I was in 21 time zones with the system. Went to Intermountain Healthcare and managed all of their IT for system administration for all of their direct healthcare systems. So basically, the surgeon is on the table looking at an image and needing information, that all came back to me. Currently working for Bank of Utah and still doing IT for some reason I can't figure out, but anyway. So Chris asked me to do this, and it's like, I already have a full-time job. I have more than a full-time job, but I'm glad to have a civic side that I like to work with. So glad to be here. Question?
My name is Kyle Northforce. I'm here primarily as inspiration from Phil. Phil got really tired of me calling him about every little detail, and he always took the time to answer my questions. And so when Chris reached out and offered me the opportunity to come here and hang out with you guys, I took it. My wife and I live up over here, just below the mountain road in what is it, Oakland Park area, just right at the mouth of Coldwater Canyon. I'm an airline pilot. That's my normal job. I'm a captain on a 737 with ejection doors.
Sorry.
And cool, but my
Do you charge extra for window seating?
no, we keep that secret so that if you're disruptive, we just hit the magic button. But I'm a volunteer on the Weber County Search and Rescue Team. I'm in leadership there. I run all the aerial ops. I also do all the training for the drones for the sheriff's office. I've done it for North Ogden PD, Harrisville, all the PDs up here in this area. I've done the training for all their aerial ops, including UTA and Highway Patrol. And then I'm also the chairman for the aerial ops for the Mountain Rescue Association, which covers all of the 90 mountain rescue teams here in North America. So I travel around and teach them how to set up their teams. So this is my 5th full-time job, I guess. But I'm happy to be here. Learn a lot. That's my main goal.
I'm Jamie Jones. I'm the finance director here in North Ogden City. Been here for just over 10 years. And I was the treasurer for about 8 years, and then I've been finance director for about 2 now.
I'm Susan Kilborn. I was actually raised in Pleasant View, moved when I was 18, married a pilot in the Air Force, moved to Sacramento, started my education. Actually, I started my education at Weber, and then I went to Sacramento State University, Notre Dame, University of Utah, got my law degree through University of Utah. Did that for about 3 years and said, screw this, I don't like it. And went to work with the federal government as a federal investigator. And I'm supposed to be retired, but I'm semi-retired because I find myself now working for them on a contract basis. I'm also involved in several civic organizations. I'm a member of the National League of Women Voters, American Civil Liberties Union, Alliance for a Better Utah, Clarity in Utah Government, and I forget all the other ones. And I'm very happy to be on the budget committee because I want to understand and help in any way I can to make this run smoothly.
Steph Casey, my husband and I own a speaker company. He grew up in North Ogden and we moved here almost 30 years ago. I love live concerts and I have 3 kids. That's big and small, but I like the city. I've been involved for about 5 years.
Bill Swanson, North Ogden resident.
North Ogden.
Myth.
Suave.
Oh, Susan. The, I believe citizen engagement is what makes communities great. And I was involved as a citizen before I was on council, obviously involved as council, and now that I'm not on council, I think I would be remiss not to stay engaged and lend what I can where I can. And I'm in healthcare for full-time period.
I'm Cindy Hill, I'm retired, ex-Northrop. I started out there in 79, so I had 42 years out there. A long time, and I was young when I started. Anyway, I worked mainly in finance, was responsible for developing and managing their operating budget over 100 million. And it is government, so I do understand a lot about the government restrictions, regulations, you know, when you have to work with budget. So that's my history and my job, and I also was on the supervisor committee for the Members First Credit Union, as well as participate in helping our HOA down in St. George, because we have a second home we spend down there with their budget. So I'm pretty familiar with budgets and the financial side.
Mr. D.
First, let me apologize.
Yeah.
I am sorry, even warned me that it would be today at 3 o'clock. We had a meeting with a particular governor that went for 2 hours, and then the roads coming back there were atrocious. So I apologize for being late. I got a little bit of budget experience. I've dabbled in politics and government for 25 years, from a mayor to a legislator to the appropriations director for the state. I moved here to this beautiful city a couple of years ago. We built a new home on the hill. We love it here. And we have now adopted North Ogden as our home. We love it here. And I've expressed that to the mayor and the city council. This has been very welcoming to come here to North Ogden. We still have some feelings about where I left, but obviously we're here and we're loving it. So I guess the reason why I'm here is because he's amazing.
What's your name?
Brad D.
Brad D.
And
The wall guy.
he and I have
The
been,
walls up by where we are.
yeah, I might have given this guy some advice sometimes about politics. So.
I usually say so.
A little bit.
So, and then Brenda and Doug, extraordinaire, Joe is a stalwart. You wanna just,
Oh, Brenda Ashdown. I lived in North Ogden all but 10 years of my life. I have no background whatsoever in budget, except for doing family finances. I just found this process very interesting.
she's very engaged.
And that's the most valuable person you have.
Yep. And then Mr. Doug, the Anderson North Ogden. Okay. Good enough. Okay. I think that's important. There'll be staff rolling in and out just to help us and stare at us intently, I guess, and yell at us whenever they think they need to. I can see that because I can't say so much here, but so do you want to go through?
You can.
Oh. That's your selling
Oh,
point.
will.
So,
He's always been looking for.
yeah, you want to go through some training, just, I mean, engagement?
But this- Hey. So I'm John, I'm the city manager. I'm also an attorney, like Susan, that got out of the gig full time, but I still do the civil side for the city. I don't do the prosecution, the criminal side of stuff. So let's go through the presentation. Jamie will fill in the stuff that I say wrong. But probably one of the critical things we're gonna talk about in this discussion is always gonna be numbers, and they will always be rounded numbers. Getting too specific causes heartache, and so if you hear a round number like, for example, $147 million in assets, it's not exactly $147 million, but we try to bring it as close just to keep things moving, because we don't expect this group to be as down in the weeds and looking at the pennies and cents, but kind of helping look at the programs and where there might be areas that the council should be looking deeper into, being more frugal, more efficient, and things like that. There's a few terms we will use in this group, that you should just become familiar with, because Jamie and I and the department heads will use them quickly. And if we say something you don't understand, especially an acronym, please stop us. Because I hate it when someone uses an acronym I don't know, and then I spend 3 minutes trying to figure it out, and I miss that 3 minutes of the conversation. So some of those things we'll use will be utility funds, or we sometimes will call those the enterprise funds. That's the water, sewer, garbage, the stuff that the city provides, that we technically, it operates more like a business and less like a government. Even though most governments offer those similar services, they're still considered business type activities. The general fund is the area that typically has the activities that you think of as governmental. And that is the fund where most of your taxes and tax dollars end up. And that's where they're spent on streets, police, parks, things like that. And we'll talk a little bit more about funds and where money comes from a little later. We also have an aquatic center fund that is kind of like, it's like if it walks like a duck and speaks like a duck, it's not a duck. It's kind of a mix between an enterprise fund and a general fund, because any revenues that in the past have been used to support it have come two routes, and one is either directly from the general fund or through property taxes through the RDA funds. And so it's a little bit of a weird anomaly, but we try to treat it more like an enterprise fund. And the goal that the council has set for us is to make it independent and pay for itself with no subsidy from anything else other than the revenues generated at that facility. And so that's one of the things that I'm sure this group might talk about.
And to interrupt you for one thing, the first time I heard RDA, I had no idea what it is.
Yeah.
So just roll with it. It's basically, what they've come up with is certain areas in the city. There's been I'm gonna go generic on you, a deal with all of the people, the tax entities that get the taxes. And so it's basically, I don't say a kickback, but it's definitely something that can be used to help redevelop that area. So right now, there's a certain amount of allocation that we're spending, that we have to spend or get,
Yeah.
and they basically have to implement and plan for, I guess. And so that's what we've been doing, but part of that, you can funnel certain things and help certain stuff out. And one of them is the aquatic center. So anyway.
How big is our RDA?
Yeah.
So most of the RDA and the CDA, so the redevelopment area and the community development areas, are essentially most of the properties that front Washington. There's some that are back off Washington a little bit. The aquatic center, for example, is in, or I should say was in the RDA. So the RDA expired. It's done. And so now it's about half the property in Washington are in what's called the CDA, community development area. But both of those areas were managed by the redevelopment agency of the city, which is also the same acronym RDA. So, but now we can abandon that. So now we have an RDA, which is the agency, and a CDA, which is the area. But yeah, to Chris's point, that's property tax increment money that is used to fund those programs. And it's a state level act that allows those areas to be created and to be used for economic and community redevelopment.
Yeah, essentially, you're trying to infuse back money that you can invest in something that you can get more property tax or some kind of sales tax back. so that you're not, you're increasing your cost basis basically for your city, so. Just
Maybe a basic question, but RDA funds, are they from the state, federal, combination? Where do they come from?
From the property owners, so that
Oh, from me.
when the properties,
Oh, okay.
when the
got it.
properties in the area pay their property tax, a portion of it goes to these entities to cover these investments back into infrastructure and other property investment.
Gotcha, thank you.
Let's see, impact fees are something that you may hear about. Those are one of the most restricted funds that we get. And the idea for those is they are paid by people who build new buildings, commercial, residential, and civic buildings. And they pay those impact fees. That money goes into a special account that then is invested into new infrastructure, roads, pipes, things like that. And it's heavily restricted by the government, by the state. They've got lots of rules, and most cities follow them pretty closely. And in fact, you'll see in this next 6 months that the council will be reviewing and adopting new impact fee facilities plans and impact fee analyses, which is tied to that. We have our capital improvement fund, or the CIP fund. That's big projects. So everything that is kind of a once every 5, once every 10, maybe once every 50 years is typically coming out of that fund. And that is money that usually is left over from previous savings or planned savings in budgets. Revenues came in higher than expected over expenditures, or they were planned to. The thing gets moved into the capital project fund to be spent on things, playgrounds, roads, buildings, things like that. Every enterprise fund also has a capital fund that they build their water lines and things out of. But the general fund, capital improvement fund, is the one I'm talking about here, is distinct from those. There's not a sharing of money. So water revenues don't get used on general fund assets like streets, buildings, parks, things like that. And then a capital project is pretty much anything in the city in excess of $10,000 that is going to have an asset life of 10 years or more. Yeah. So a good example is our vehicles cost more than that, but they don't typically have an expected life with the city of 10 years. So we don't capitalize them as capital projects. Although I guess technically what's our depreciation schedule on those 5 years? Yeah. So, but all of our pipes, the shortest time frame on any of the pipes in the city from when it was installed is a 50-year life. So all our sewer lines, water lines are expected to last at least 50. The newer stuff that's going in with the new plastics and things is actually expected to last much longer. There's some manufacturers and uses where we're expecting 100 years of life. So
Your life's determined, you guys, there's that requirement by the government.
yeah.
It's that what was the auditors?
It's set the auditors.
So they'll give us a schedule that says for a concrete pipe, it's this long. And there's some stuff you might hear about with the sewer where we're relining. So we're putting a plastic pipe inside a concrete pipe. It goes in soft, and then it gets blown up like a balloon and then cured in resin. And it actually is extending the life of those pipes by 50 to 100 years because it's a pretty good plastic. And the industry is pretty good about that. Yeah. And yeah, it helps with root intrusion and all sorts of issues. One of the hardest things that you will wrestle with, those of you who haven't been part of government accounting, is understanding how the government gets its money. Because it comes in basically 3 different ways: taxes, fees, and grants. And the best example of a fee is your water fee. What you pay to the city every month, that's a fee. But other ones are recreation fees. We have plan review fees for the planning department or building permit fees. And then grant money is typically coming from another federal agency or some private agencies. We've applied for a few private agency grants and haven't received them. But we get grants from the feds, the state, and even county resources. And then the last one is taxes, and that's the one that most everyone thinks of when they think of government. Property tax makes up about 25% of our revenues in the general fund, which is less than 10% of the total city revenue. So, but that is the one that probably, as you've interacted with other residents, they think that the city runs on their property tax, and that's partly because most of us don't realize that only 10% of what we pay in property tax goes to North Ogden City. The other 90% goes to other taxing entities like the school district, the county, the mosquito abatement, Northview Fire, things like that. So, tax, the other thing that's really hard is, yeah, go.
Toss the tissue box, please.
Absolutely.
I was gonna do one.
I'm sorry I'm making you cry.
It's so confusing.
Most of the revenue sources that are probably, I'd probably say it's also complicated in that most of our revenue sources, the city doesn't have a lot of control over. But part of the reason that the ones you hear about the most, which is property tax and fees, our monthly fees, that you hear about the most complaints is because the city actually does have a lot of control over those. The city has the option through the truth and taxation process to establish our tax rate for property taxes for our portion. Again, that 10% right now of the property tax. And the same thing with our user fees at the enterprise level, and then the user fees like planning and recreation, those sorts of things. But sales tax, we don't get a say in. They used to have a local option sales tax that the cities could impose that is sunsetting in 2030. And if you didn't get in by 2014, you couldn't get in. And so Riverdale, for example, has that, and it is expiring in 6 years. And they are wondering how they're going to work through that because it's a significant portion of their income for the city. And so those are the numbers we not play with, makes it sound like it's flippant. Those are the numbers we evaluate and the council wrestles with every year is what should the tax rate be and what should the utility rates be?
Well, same, not funny, but the county ensures that the city gets the same amount of tax revenue each year. And so depending on if your house goes up or down, that tax rate goes up and down, but we don't adjust that. But if we need more revenue, then we do adjust it. But the funny thing is that it could be 11% one year, housing rate and blah, 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 blah. It could be 12 or 10, but yet we have to raise it up again to get what we need. And that's the thing that is a little bit
So I'm
insane.
confused, that rate on your property tax, I always feel like that rate goes up and down, but my value goes up, so they're still getting it. So that rate, when the value goes up, we can pay more tax, but yet the rate's lower. So you still get 10% of what that rate is, or what the value of the property.
So if no other entity in the county raised their property tax, then your home value going up or down would just change the rate, so you paid the same.
Right.
And that's assuming it's all equal. But what mostly happens every year is at least one taxing entity increases, and so your taxing dollars continually go up. Or sometimes the county will come in and reevaluate your home and say it's actually worth 100,000 more than it was, and other houses have gone down in value, and so they might readjust it. So you might end up paying more, but it's equalized over the whole system. So the city gets the same $2.4 million a year from property tax, but your house might go up and mine might go down, and the county takes a little from you because your value went up and a little less from me because mine went down.
It's bizarre.
So basically you're on a flat 10% year for year. You
So-
don't get an increase in that.
We never get an increase without doing a truth and taxation.
10% of what though?
Right now it's 10% of what you write a check to the county for.
Okay.
So
if my taxes go up, you're gonna get an increase. If they go up, you're gonna get.
They only go up if we do a truth and taxation and change our rate. And again, it might, I know it might look,
100,000 and 10% of that is what, 10,000. Next year I pay 200,000. Then you're getting into 20,000, so it has to be going up.
It's not a fixed rate like that.
Oh,
It's just
okay,
a
that's
rough,
what I was wondering.
roughly, if you look at your total tax bill and your total tax bill is $5,000.
Okay,
Your North Ogden tax bill will be roughly 10% of that is actually going, about $500 is about what will go to North Ogden. But what goes to North Ogden is determined by the rate, the certified county rate. For North Ogden, which is usually about 10% of what the total rate is, depending on what the other agencies. But I think it's interesting as we begin these discussions, because there's always that chance that a recommendation to raise property tax rate above what the certified rate is could occur. There's a bill in the legislature right now that if it's passed this year, and I have a feeling it will, it's just my personal opinion, that it will pass, it will prohibit municipalities from raising the property tax rate without having first a vote by the people. It will require a vote for any property tax rate increase. Which basically guarantees that no municipality will ever have a property tax rate increase, which will be a major ball and chain on every municipality in the state. We trying to, because you figure every year there's 10, 12, 13% inflation that the city incurs just to provide last year's services. And if there isn't revenue to cover that, then something's got to get cut. So anyway, that's lurking out there that could, by the time we're done with this committee, that the legislation may be passed. And that could affect what we're able to do or what we're able to recommend.
Yeah, sorry, I scrolled on that one, but if you look at your past rates for North Ogden, even when they don't change the increase, it's all over the map. So that was one of the reasons I was like, what is going on? And so there's
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, the only one I didn't hear you talk about is bonding. Loans and I'm not, and
yeah, no, but that.
going through all the kinds of money that the city might have and.
And that's a good example of a bond is basically a way the city puts money into our account. We typically pay it over 10 to 20 years. We currently have 2 bonds that were issued in the past 24 months for about $9.75 million to facilitate the construction of the new public safety building. They're 20-year bonds and the total premium's about $600,000. It's less than that, but again, I'm rounding. And that's the council passed that. It's called it's actually a sales tax revenue bond. So if all else fails, the revenue that the city gets from sales tax dollars will first has to go to pay that bond. So that provides some stability for the investors, people who buy the bonds, so they know they're going to get their money back over the 20 years. That was extremely low interest rates. I think one was 1.9 and the other one
Really low.
was
2.4, was it even 2.4? It was 2 point something, wasn't it?
yeah. But, and we couldn't get those rates today. So, but anyway, so for the next 20 years, unless the city saves enough money up to pay it off early, we can expect to pay about $600,000 a year for that.
And my other question is, where does our city put our property tax?
So our property tax per our resolution with the council is all spent on police. And it covers, I think, is it 55%, Phil, Jamie, 56%. So 56% of our police department is covered by property tax. The rest comes from some federal grants and mostly sales tax.
Oh, yeah.
And so every time you buy locally, the city gets a little more money out of every local purchase than we do from, like, if you go to Harrisville and buy out of Walmart, the city still gets some money because of the way it works. But if you're spending your money locally here in the city at Lee's or at, I almost said P.F. Chang's, but Zhang's, for dinner, the city gets more of that money than, because it's a local option or local.
And Amazon, not that I'm pushing.
I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
Anything internet goes to the address, so. But, I mean,
Yeah.
anything helps, but.
That makes me feel bad.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah. When you go home and just find a pile of boxes on your porch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Mayor,
it would be good for this group to know too, how out of balance we are between commercial and residential taxes. We have very little commercial in comparison to most other cities. In fact, I think it was last year, the year before, so you'll remember this. Where the residential homeowners took on much more of a burden on the property tax because they didn't reassess. Commercial, they actually decreased it, so to make that money up. Residential ended up paying for that, but we are way out of balance in regards to how we fund the city. Just so you know.
to again, kind of wrap it all up, but the city operates more like General Electric than it does like McDonald's. So McDonald's kind of has one thing it does. It feeds people, you know, there's franchises and other things, but how many of you have a General Electric appliance in your house? How many of you have a General Electric jet engine that you fly? Right? So General Electric does hospital, electronics, jet engines, aviation. I mean, and that's more like what we do because we have different divisions, public works with the water sewer compared to recreation, aquatic center, police. So we're more like a conglomerate company with the council being the board for the entire conglomerate. It's just our revenues are not anywhere near what GE's are. And maybe thankfully so, because that's a lot of hassle. But if you were to compare the city's assets, which is just under $147 million, that's all our roads, pipes, parks, buildings, everything like that. We would be competing with Fortune 500 companies as far as asset value. Obviously, they don't lump us in with Fortune 500 companies because we don't operate the same way as them. But most municipalities, local governments, and state governments have assets that exceed many of the businesses you know and shop at every day. So, anyways, just as a FYI. Yeah. The government accounting, its goal is to balance every year. Its goal is not to make a profit, because any profit we make is intended to be saved for a purpose. The state has some rules that do not let us keep a fund balance which exceeds 35% in our general fund. And then in our enterprise funds, there's not a specific amount, but the auditor can come in and be upset if we are out of line. If we had $100 million sitting there in our water department, there may be some questions for us about why we need such an excessive reserve. And then we also have minimums. We can't go below 5% per the state auditor rules, but our council has currently set the floor at 15%. So we call it our rainy day fund, which again is just in the general fund of at least 15%, which at this point would be $1.5 million, assuming we have a $10 million budget of revenues. But we could hold up to 3.5 million. And we are currently projected at about 2.5. So we're kind of at 25% range. The main goal from all the department heads and from Jamie, me, the mayor, and the council is we try to minimize expenses, get the best bang for our buck, and weather the storms that come. Because 2008 is the best example. The city's sales tax revenue dropped by 20%, which in our day and age means that our sales tax revenue would drop by $900,000. And that's almost 10% of our general fund budget. And so that's significant. It's a real impact. With the way that we structure things and the tight ship that Jamie runs with the help of the council and everyone and the departments, especially for the last, I don't know, not forever, but for the for the recent memorable future past. Almost every department comes in under budget, and our revenues have typically come in over budget, meaning we get more revenues, we spend a little less, and that's allowed us to build our capital improvement fund. But that's just one of the nice things about that is that's a real kind of shout out to the department heads who they don't spend it if they don't need it. If you've been involved in the federal government, that's sometimes if they don't spend it, they don't get it appropriated next year, and so they have to spend it.
Yep.
Those of you who, yeah, there's a lot of you who dealt with federal
And I'm not saying
contracts.
you agree with that.
But then again, it depends too.
Yeah, and sometimes we plan for it and we're frugal. Sometimes it's an accident in the sense that we might have a department where we have 2 employees who leave towards the end of the fiscal year, and we don't replace them for 2 months, and that can add up really quick. One of the, when you review the audit report, you'll notice that one of our departments was 2.7% over budget. That was our recreation department, and that was $27,000, $2,700, right?
No, he's talking about.
Over budget. So we had our football program, we had a lot more kids sign up, so we spent more money. Our police department was actually 2.7% under budget to the tune of about $70,000. So some percentages matter, but oftentimes the dollar matters more. And again, that wasn't because we had some planned excess in the budget. Some of the expenses didn't come in as high as we expected, either through finding grants or just finding ways to do it a little more efficiently, or some transition time for employees, for example.
So do you research why your sales tax revenues coming in less?
For sales tax, Jamie has built a fairly good predictor. I wish I could say it was perfect. But it's the last couple of years it's been better, and it's tied to several key indicators at the state level. And it predicts it, but sales tax is hard because if people don't buy cars, or let's even go to the point where if Chevy doesn't make as many trucks as they normally do, so there's not as many available to be sold in Utah, then we may see a decrease in sales tax across the state, which means our share of the state sales tax number goes down.
But
So you get a share of the state as well as.
Yeah.
That share.
50% there's a sales tax, and the
Yeah.
other half is split up.
50%?
no, it's
50% point of sale, right?
So there's a local option dollar amount, which is 1%. 1%. Half of that goes to the jurisdiction where it's sold. That's what I'm saying. If you buy locally, then we get that. The other half goes to the state to a pool of money that then they divide up based on population.
Okay.
So Riverdale doesn't get as much money from that pool as we do, because they have 6,000 residents and we have 22.
So their rates are-
Well, but they get a lot more local option because they have a ton of businesses, and so their budget, their sales tax budget exceeds ours, even though we have 3 times the population. And that's because we all shop at Target, or we all shop at the mall, Pretzel Maker. That's one of my favorite spots to hit.
But the downside of taxes is, sales tax, is that it comes 2 months after it's done. So like the December sales tax,
So it's a matching principle,
yeah.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, so if it's generated
Yeah.
November, we might get it 2 months later because everybody's reporting in December on November. And then the state has to report on it, so it's a 2-month cycle. But, so
You
when
only
we
have 1
receive
year
it,
lag and then you continue.
yeah,
Okay.
so when we receive it in January, it's really November's.
Yeah. And that is why you'll see the council, one of the things they talk about a lot, and the RDA group, the redevelopment agency, talks about a lot, is how do we get more commercial? Because that does 2 good things for the city. One is provides opportunity for sales tax, or even if it's a business that doesn't generate sales tax, like a bank, doctor's office, or some of those, it's causing people to come into the city, and we get that pass-by benefit, meaning they're driving by Starbucks, so they're going to stop and buy a Starbucks, right? But the other nice thing is that commercial property generates sales tax or property tax significantly higher than residential. One, because the properties are, the value of the land is worth more, the structures are typically worth more, but it's taxed at 100%, where your home is taxed at 55% of the value. So, yeah.
And that's gonna be a major push in the legislature this year. And, you know, keep your ear to the ground, it's gonna be a change, probably. Because with the governor's new proposal of 35,000 homes for starter homes in the next 5 years, they're gonna change those metrics. So you can actually get those increments of housing, and they're working with contractors now to make sure that they can implement those. So it'll almost become its own RDA, but it's gonna be residential. So you'll see those things fluctuate over the next probably 4 or 5 years as those things come into play. And I think it's gonna do this. So I think it's gonna go.
And to Brad's point, the hard thing about all of this is so much of the decisions on how the money comes to the city is not in the hands of the city. So if they start touching the increment on starter homes or on just residential at all, and that goes into some state fund, then that impacts the amount of money we have to spend on our police department. And so and then if you combine that with the idea that we can't do a tax increase without getting a majority of the residents to vote on it, it'll make it really hard because no one ever wants to pay more money. And so anyway, so there's a lot happening right now. And so welcome to an exciting time of local government. I want to go through some of the expenses you will see in the budgets. Just is pretty standard across all the funds. Salaries is one of those you'll see in almost every single fund, because we have employees that work in almost every single fund. There's a few that are not there. Non-departmental doesn't have salaries, for examples, because we don't have employees in non-departmental. That's where insurance and some of the general city expenses come from. Benefits are tied to that. Government employees, if the standard thought in the world is government employees make a little less than their commercial counterparts or the private industry, but oftentimes they're seen as having a richer benefit package. And so benefits are a significant portion of that, particularly for public safety, where there's a significant back end in the UARS, the retirement system, to make sure those folks, when they hit their retirement after currently 25 years for those in the tier 2 system, they can retire with full benefits. It used to be 20 years, and they changed that 10 years ago in 2014. So we have
So what is it now?
it's 25 years.
Tier 1 and tier 2. Tier
Right.
1 remains.
Yeah, so tier 1 was 20 years, and it's now 25 years for public safety. The other tier, or for everybody else that isn't public safety, it's essentially stayed the same. 30 years or a certain age is when you're allowed to retire. The intergovernmental expenses. So there will be times that we are paying ourselves money. So the police department, for example, pays the motor pool department to maintain its vehicles. And for proper government accounting, we have to show that transaction happening so that who's incurring the expense is paying the cost. Sometimes it feels a little weird because it's general fund money in the motor pool, it's general fund money in the police, but it feels like it's showing how the money's moving as opposed to accounting for it like you would a normal business. There's a lot of department supplies. Water, for example, when we go out and buy pipe for projects, we just bought $160,000 worth of water pipe last week. And then you get to a department like the planning department, that's Scott with the Be Kind hoodie on. He does not spend $160,000 on office supplies, but he buys computers and paper and things like that. And so every department will be a little different. Some departments have professional expenses associated with them. The water, sewer, those departments, you'll see a lot of it because we have engineers. We have an in-house engineer, but to do the design work, a lot of times we're farming that out, or our in-house engineer is. And so we get a lot of expenses that come in through professional. That way, we also have computer programs. We pay utility bills just like anybody else, gas, water, things like that. And so those are a lot of the ones you'll see. we do get some revenues that you might not be aware of. We do get donations. We typically, even on years when we're not out beating the pavement, we will get donations for activities. One of the successes the city had this last year was the Cherry Days Committee, which is a group of individuals who went out and said, let us take it on this year. It won't be a city-run activity. Well, sorry, it won't be, it'll be a city sponsor, but it will rely on volunteer hours to organize it. They went out and raised $65,000 in donations to help fund that. Where in the past, it's typically come about 25,000 from city, I'm gonna call it sales tax dollars. And then another, 20 to 25 of donations. So they really went out and ramped it up and found money. And then they also got a significant amount of revenue from their activities. If you went to the luau and had dinner, it paid for itself and then some, and so they went out this year and spent more money and made more money than the city has ever before and done a celebration that, I'm just gonna say paid for itself. That's always the goal, right? And
Great job.
yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. And so if any of you are really bored and you want to get involved, I know Stephanie helped with the car show last year.
It sounded every event.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Stephanie was our sound person. And so anyways, there's lots of other ways to get involved. So I'm just putting a plug out there. Or if you know people who you just think are bored, Cherry Days is a great direction to send them because there's so much fun stuff.
That was fun.
Let's see. I'm getting to the end of my little bullet point list. Oh, there are, we talked a little bit about funds. There's a few other funds I didn't mention. We do have what we call special revenue funds. That is money that comes in and it has to be spent very specific ways. It's usually coming from the state or the federal government. We don't have internally any special revenue funds we've created. Right, Jamie? Yeah. We have some that we've internally said, hey, or the council has said, hey, all our property tax is going to go to police, but we didn't call it a special revenue fund in the sense that it would places some auditing restrictions on it that aren't necessary for that. But our BNC road money is a good example where the money the state gives us that they get through their fuel taxes and other revenues they give us to help maintain our roads. We have to spend it on roads, snow removal, and the staffing for those two activities. Yes.
If we have a winter where there's X amount of dollars allocated for snow removal and we don't have the amount of snow needed to exhaust that supply, where does that money go? Does it go back to the general fund to be used where it's needed?
So it goes into that general fund, that balance between the 15 and the 35% that the city carries every year.
Okay, so it just goes,
Yeah. And as that fund gets too high, let's say, again, the council's minimum is 15,000, the maximum at the state's 35. If we were going to exceed 35 or exceed whatever the council wants, we move it into the capital project fund. And so that's where it could end up. But the flip side is when you have a winter like last year, that was double the cost for salt, time and all that and maintenance on the vehicles. We end up having to do a budget amendment and reduce the amount of money that is either in the fund or last year we reduced the amount of money we transferred to the fund.
Yeah, so that's a variable.
Yeah.
So is that fund kind of like a reserve? Is that?
That's what we call it, our rainy day fund. That when the floods come, the money is there to help us get through it. And one thing that sometimes people think, hey, if there's ever a disaster of a certain catastrophe, that the feds will be there and they will save us. Even if they are there, that they're not there the next day. And so you can hope for life-saving stuff you hope for 3 days. But infrastructure is much longer. And so we have to front the money. And so that's part of the reason, if you look at the audit report, you'll see that we have some significant fund balances. And I would call them significant because I don't have that much in my bank account. But you know, the money we have at the PTIF, which is the State Public Trust Investment Fund, where we have to keep our money for the most part, is a lot of money, and it's there for those events and to fund our capital projects that are up and coming. And so the general fund right now, our balance $4 million, 3.1.
Do you invest that money or do you leave it in there then?
So they invest it for us. And then the city did just authorize, we now have there's a small group of investors or investment companies. There's a 5 to 10 groups who are authorized to invest public funds. And so we have started a plan with them where we're giving them $5 million so that they can invest it, because in the hope that it will make a little bit more money than the PTIF, but it's still very heavily restricted. We're not buying junk bonds. That's probably the term that everyone who grew up in the 80s is aware of.
You're not day trading.
Yeah, it's not day trading. It's most of our money. So when interest rates are really low, the PTIF was earning less than 1%. Last year it was earning about 4.5%. So most of that money is invested in investments that really follow the market rates. Mayor.
Like we, this last year, I would just advise this committee not to look at that as ongoing revenue fund operations.
Yeah.
We look at that as money to use for future projects, because if we don't, and that interest goes away, massive increases start taking place in water bills, sewer bills.
Yeah.
Property tax. And so we try to look at things to fund operations that are ongoing, because otherwise we really get ourselves in the ringer when we have to make massive increases.
And we ended up in a really unique scenario last year, because we borrowed with the bond the money to pay for this building up front, right? Because you can't take it as you pay for the building. And then interest rates went up. And so we had all our money in the PTIF account, and it started getting 4.5% interest. And remember, we're paying 1.9 to 2.4% on it. And so we got a positive arbitrage is what it's called, where we were making more money than we were paying on interest. And if you could have predicted that, you could have borrowed, $1 billion and been very well off, but.
We need a psychic.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great way to decide to do it.
Well, there's one other thing that, as you're going through things, is depreciation. So they started a lot of big stuff, depreciating it, and that's one thing that when I was going through some of the budget, it kind of, I'm like, where does this go? So I mean, it's something that comes off, but it's there, but it's not. I don't know, when you go through it, you understand what I'm talking about, because it's a little odd, but I think in the end, it plans for replacement of large ticket items, and that's the point. Yeah.
And there's been several kind of struggles just in government lately. And Utah's a little unique, and maybe not as unique, but it's going to relate to, so public safety, we have several struggles. One is salaries. Trying to hire and retain quality personnel in that department is rough. To put it in perspective, when I started with the city 12 years ago, that we were paying a starting officer $15.62 an hour. No, maybe it was $14.92. No, maybe that was the day. That was when Columbus sailed, right?
Yes.
So $15.62. And we're not quite double that now, but in that 12 years, those salaries have gone up, partly because 12 years ago, we would have 10 applicants for every job. And right now there's probably 10 jobs for every applicant. On top of that, and it ties into not necessarily what's happened in Utah, but there have the insurance industry for police liability has also increased significantly. Utah at the legislature did some things that helped keep protections to local agencies, and in particular the individual officers. They call that qualified immunity, and some of those terms you've heard that have kept insurance costs to the city lower, but we've still seen a significant increase in our insurance costs. Some because of some claims we've seen, but two, just because the industry's going a little high and hectic right now. Cyber liability is a huge thing. So it may seem weird, but again, go back to that Fortune 500 asset package we have. We are just as likely to be a target to international terrorists, financial terrorists, or cyber terrorists as any other municipality, city, anything like that. So we've had to really up our cyber readiness. And there have been cities in Utah that have been hit. A couple of them have paid and they've gotten their data back. A couple of them have been hit, didn't pay because they had a way to recover their data and they lost maybe a week's worth. But it's a pretty risky thing. Cyber liability is rough right now. So, Mayor, you had a comment.
John, just to point out the committee too, and Kyle knows this probably, it costs us about $140,000 a year for a police officer with all their equipment, their vehicles, et cetera. And it's a very competitive market. I believe the state recently gave every highway patrol trooper a $10 an hour raise. We just lost an officer to Riverdale for $7 an hour more. And we're paying them. I know you're all very smart people, so you know how much more it costs to replace somebody. Right? The other issue we have is we have, and Bill is very familiar with this, we have one officer per 1,000 residents in the city. I think the national average is something like 2.3.
Right.
So just if we grow out at 40,000 people in the city and think we can maintain one officer per 1,000, we're looking at 40 officers, which is double our force. But I always maintain as we go to 40,000 people, we're probably going to need 1.5 officers per 1,000 because more people, more incidents, right? And so I would just ask, as you look at the budget, we really got to look forward on where the city's going with its growth. There's a tendency to just kind of look at things on a year-by-year basis. That's what kind of hit us up, catching up with some things that were committed that weren't funded, right? So we're trying to really look at where we want to be and how we're going to fund that. I think that's an important part of input you can give us as a group. But those are the kind of things that we're faced with. And you can see the problem if they cap property taxes, right? To me, it's a major situation of keeping cities safe. If they're not safe, the state's not safe, right? So anyway, if you would just kind of look at those type of things as you're looking at how we move to where we want to be from where we're at, or was it Wayne Gretzky that said, you know, and try to concentrate on where the puck's going to be versus where it is. So those are a lot of things that just don't kind of pop up out of the, you know, but employee wages, public safety wages have probably accounted for, rightfully so, by the way, because I never go out for $19 an hour, put my life on every day. That's probably accounted for what, 80% of our property tax increase needs.
So is there a benefit for pro-growth? Like you just keep building all of these apartments that stack up on top of each other and.
That's
You know,
the hard thing is, and this goes back to they call it the bundle of sticks, right? Of property rights. The federal government says you have the right to use your property, and the state legislature is now weighing into what that right means. The original proposal that came out in December was 8 units to the acre everywhere. And that's likely not going to be what's passed, but there will be something passed that provides some sort of guaranteed ability to look at starter homes. They kept calling it moderate income housing, and they're really focusing on the starter home, getting that married couple or the young professional or, you know, that person who's maybe in their mid 30s, early 40s that needs their first house. They're really trying to get those people into units, so they're not renting in
So you're
perpetuity.
saying start a home as in a home or as an apartment?
The state is focused on homes. In fact, the governor wants detached homes. I think Kyle's
Just like
been up
three
for,
people.
yeah.
I just wanted to reiterate more of what the mayor was saying. So in my position with the sheriff's office and being able to stand shoulder to shoulder, not only with the deputies, but also with the officers here in North Ogden, I have stood shoulder to shoulder with them on different calls. Like that one gentleman that was really nice that came from California to say hi to his brother up over here. So I was there on that call. And then I was also, I did some SWAT training, and there were a couple of guys from North Ogden that I went through that training with. And you mentioned $7 an hour. These men and women make so little that $7 an hour is huge for them. And so if they can, I was just actually talking to another officer. It sounds like there's going to be another one going to Riverdale soon. So if we need to take care of our men and women in blue for sure.
And your
Having
fire
some-
department as well.
Yes, absolutely, yes. I mean, that's gonna be my bias and my priority would be to take care of them, because even though I do have a nice job that pays me a nice salary, these men and women stand in front of me, and I feel so guilty. So that's why I went and did the SWAT training, because I could stand shoulder to shoulder with them, because they do that and they're amazing for that. Anyway, I just wanted to add some nuance to that with our men and women.
Shoulder, Susan's like gonna hit me.
Backtracking a little bit, when Mr. Mayor was talking about looking long range, did you not mention that you wanted us, or your suggestion was for us to focus 5 years out? Where did I
Yes.
get that?
No, it's on there. I mean, I
Yeah.
said 5 years, but that's just because some of the
Do we have
briefings,
commitments out that far already
planning,
that
yeah.
we have to do?
Well, I mean, just example, what is it, just 26, they're gonna do the Washington extension farther up. I mean,
And-
just little things like that.
And we have water meters that need to be replaced, meters and radios, that is multi-millions of dollars of meters and radios to be installed.
Yeah, just little things like that. Obviously, there's some that are compartmentalized where they'll come out of certain things, but to me, police department, that has to be, is it 1? Is it 1.5? Is it 4? Is it, the whole point of it is to start plugging in numbers and go, holy cow, we can't afford this without doing this, or,
Mhm.
and so that's the thing that you can't. As I delved into this last year, it's like, holy cow, they're doing everything they can. They've consolidated this, they've consolidated that. What's left? So it's either increased revenue with, pushing commercial. There's only a couple of revenue streams you can really say push, but you can manipulate a little bit to get going, and that's it. And so that's the whole point. But for here, I think growing, what you want to focus on. And then maybe start looking at, well, where's the revenue stream come from? So to me, it's focusing on what you guys want to see on the whole growth situation. And if you see, how to do that revenue part of it, that's the other part. But, I think the focusing, because right now the council's like, well, we have all these roads, we have, all these things that you could plug in $10 million and just plug it for a little bit, and so it's one of those things, where do we go? So anyway, I don't know, there's like 4. Steph was next, I think.
I was just wondering if the officer to resident ratio included the approved, developments that we've got going in, so it doesn't include them.
Yikes.
And
Well, just speaking of what Mayor said on the officer piece, if salaries didn't change what we're paying today, and it billed out at 40,000 people, and we were to go to 1.5 officers, so, 60% of what the national average is, and we can get away with 1.5 officers. That's a $9 million a year bill. Now, bear in mind that right now we have 2.4 million a year in property taxes. So let's say it doubles because we double in population. So now we're at 4.8,
I want that.
right? We're at 4.8. No, not your cost.
Yeah.
No, I don't
city-
want a 2 million in population.
Oh, God.
Well, it would only be a 20,000
It's only just
increase,
above your house, don't worry about
but so now we've got 4.8 of $9 million just to have a police department. We have right now about $4.7 million a year in sales tax. So now you're looking at all of your property tax and all of your sales tax to fund one department.
Mhm.
And no general fund dollars for anything else. And if this legislation passes where we can't, the city, the council, the mayor, they can't do a property tax increase without a vote of the people. You're looking at a future that is very difficult to staff. Right, with public safety and things like
You guys
that.
have to fix that anyway.
I mean, don't look.
I moved to West Haven and I had cow pastures on 3 sides and it was wide open, no fences for miles. Reason why I left is because if you've driven out there lately, it is a hodgepodge of everything from my $750,000 house to having 4-story apartments next door to each other, and the guy's trying to have animals, which he's zoned for and bought the property for, and it's a mess. They don't have a police department. My utility bills moving here dropped $80 a month from what they are, because
Have to jack them up.
I'm thanks, but I have to say, because somebody at least did some decent planning in advance. And I didn't have three different contractors coming in, a different sewer provider district, a different garbage district, and then the city charged a tax on top of every one of those services. So, yay, at least some planning has gone into it, but I realize that it's hard. It's the reason why I decided to come. Yes. I didn't have enough trouble in my life already.
And I would probably say this is just to kind of wrap up my portion, and we do want to keep these meetings to 2 hours. So we're only at an hour and a half, so don't feel like you're getting kicked out of the room. Although you do have a time limit because planning will be in here and eventually. But what if the biggest impact that this group and the council can make on the budget is likely going to be the evaluation of individual programs and how those programs pay for themselves, or if they're critical to the mission. And I believe that the city is pretty lean and mean, and we've got very efficient and necessary or highly desired things going on. But that doesn't mean that if we get in a situation with the state legislature doing what they're doing, that, and I'm going to pick on them because I know Justin will forgive me, but if the pool doesn't pay for itself, it could be very likely that the council could in some years say, we will not put any more money here, and they'll look at selling it to either a private entity to run a pool or selling it for the highest and best use, which is likely apartments over there by all the other townhomes and apartments. So, and so,
What person?
I don't know the sponsors off top.
Representative Ward, I think.
I don't think.
No,
it's
that's
that.
S 306.
Oh,
That's the zoning. I'm talking about the
the other one.
taxation one.
It's,
But-
it is from
Clancy.
Utah County.
Is it Clancy?
I think it is.
Yeah,
But
the
there
guy,
was
the
a-
26-year-old.
He's a 26-year-old police officer.
Yeah, that's Clancy.
Yeah. So it's just the idea that the resident should make the decision on property tax. And right now they do, it's just through a representative form, right? So you elect representatives who then make the decision. Yeah, it's like the federal government, but so really programs is likely going to be the friction point in the coming years over the budget, because there's not, police is a good example. There's not a lot of blood left in the turnip. That if we are losing officers because we're $3, $4, $5 short, then that's a reality. That the nice thing we have is North Ogden polices a different thing than they police in Riverdale. It's not all shoplifting, and it's not all, there's just, so some people choose to be here even though they make a little less because they like the environment here. But when you're talking $7, to Kyle's point, and $14,000 a year is a lot of money. And when a house costs $3,000 to $3,800 a month to be for a starter home in the $400,000 to $500,000 range, that's what a starter home is now. our officers can't afford
Well, and childcare for them,
and childcare.
because our officers can't live on a single income. So both spouses have to work.
So, and just if you wondered what the rest of the stuff in the packet was, it's basically, it was a very good rundown of all of the departments. And I thought it was a darn good, just kind of a split out of all of the stuff that each person does or each department does. And so that, it was worth its weight in gold going through that. It was lengthy, but, the result of what, Ryan did on the minutes was spectacular. I thought that I printed it out for everybody. So, that combined with, I think, reading those two documents I mentioned. And then also, do you want to send, do you have updates to those 5-year, whatever?
I don't have any changes, but
Okay.
yeah, so that's,
So is this what we're gonna be looking at
I
then?
don't have any
No.
changes, but there's been no discussion.
What's it? I don't know. So, just
And
to
here we.
answer, yeah, to answer Cindy, basically, so Public Works, I mean, and so it's split into,
Right.
that's what he's in charge of. But so this is all what the city does and provides for the citizenry and, you know, and so that's what, when you're looking at the budget and you see a line item for water and you wonder why, I don't know, something, then you see that, oh, holy cow, they're doing all of these things, you know, or that's their reasoning of why they have parks is, you know, they have maintenance of 9 parks, totaling 700 or 600, 70 acres of ground. So, I mean, you know, why do they need, making up a number, 14 lawnmowers? Well, they have that kind of places.
One person on streets.
Yeah, so there's a lot, and the crazy part is that you'll start to see that there's a lot of cross utilization across all departments. When there's snowplow drivers, it
Right.
doesn't matter if you're in parks or blah, 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 you're driving a snowplow. So, that's the part of the efficiency that I noted in all of these things last year is that, and like John said, there's not much left. He said turnip, I like, you know, you can't get blood from a stone, and so that's kind of the same thing. But, sorry, Jamie, you said there's those 5-year plans that you presented.
Yeah, I don't have any updates.
Okay, so I'll just, what I'll do, I think that was electronic, wasn't it?
That's
Okay.
sponsored, that will.
So I'll send that out to you folks, and just so that, again, future stuff, there's a lot of data that you're gonna have to read through and understand, and a lot of it is gonna be, holy cow, I don't get any of this. I mean, Doug and I remember just looking at each other going, I have no idea what this means, so. And I think, what time is it? You know, there's 2 other things I want to do, obviously, at this point is let's get a chair. And select a chair amongst ourselves. Christy Pack's the only person out here. She had a prior engagement, but so we got everybody else here. Is to kind of vote on a chair for you guys, some folks of the 8, and there's a hand raised.
Can I summarize what I sent you about what I read?
Oh,
and
yes, yes.
found out?
Yes,
Just so people have an idea of what the chair of,
that was very good. Yeah, in fact, I was gonna read that, but I think it's better.
well, go ahead.
No, summarize. I like.
I already have an assignment, so why don't you take it? Now you gotta find it, right?
No, it's right there on the top, probably.
I just thought it'd be nice because it is geared towards what the chair would do in this type of committee.
Yeah. So what Susan's talking about.
Yeah, unless you're crossing good education.
So that's social media. So, yeah, and then, yeah, the side little gig that we're doing also
You
is,
couldn't increase the 10% field passes.
go ahead. Can't find it real fast. I thought you had it.
When I just go back to the email.
No, I got it. No, I.
Okay, you got it?
I already got it. Let's see. So. These basically what this is just some ideas for, who could be a good chair. So detail oriented. They have a sharp eye for details and budget proposals, financial reports to spot potential issues or inconsistencies. Meticulous review of documents is key. Good financial knowledge, a solid grasp of accounting principles, financial analysis, municipal finance regulations, budgeting processes crucial. They should understand revenue streams, debt obligations, forecasting models, etc. Leadership skills, chair person, they need to be effectively coordinate budget work, facilitate productive discussions, build consensus. Communication abilities, be able to clearly explain recommendations as well as financial trade-offs to city council, staff. Listening skills important, no good negotiation talents. I'm talking too much, let's see, impartiality, act without bias, responsiveness,
Mhm.
as, basically as economic conditions and policy shift, you need to adapt to that, like we were just talking about, that's kind of key thing. Ideal chairperson blends financial literacy, leadership capabilities, communication skills, impartiality to guide sound and responsive budgeting and responsibility. So that was awesome. I mean, Susan spent more time than most people on that. So
I don't wanna be it.
oh, I was gonna say, I was gonna nominate.
No.
No, I can't, I'm not gonna nominate. I mean, this is gonna be amongst you folks.
And you can't be it, huh?
I thought about it and Susan talked me out of it because it's kind of like, it's not my responsibility. I can help lead the meeting. I can set up stuff with staff and, you know, kind of maybe give my thoughts, but I think for the most part, the committee should lead itself. That makes sense. So that sounds like you're nominating yourself. Is that what you said? Susan,
I would like to nominate 2 individuals
okay,
for consideration based on that criteria.
go.
And they are the pretty lady on the end and Suave. Did you want me to call you a pretty lady? Are you upset with me?
Yes, maybe I do want to be a pretty lady today.
Okay, hey, I got the right. name.
Be inclusive, that's right. So,
Just from what everybody said their backgrounds are and whatnot, it seems like they have the finger on the pulse of knowing budgeting processes. And to me, that's critical. The only thing I'm concerned about is who has the hardest right hook, because I don't want that person.
no, I think it's the point either, but yeah, I understand.
That's just my opinion.
Thoughts, anybody else?
I have a lot. I've had a lot to say over the last 10 years.
Are you looking at me?
No, I mean, I'll serve wherever, right? Everybody knows that. That's just how I am and how I've been. But I've had a lot to say over the last 10 years, and I've conducted a lot of meetings, and I've been leading things a lot for the last 10 years. And this, in a way, it kind of subverts the purpose of this committee for me to lead it. Because I've been in that role a lot, and having a different opinion, having a different perspective. Everybody knows what my perspective is. Everybody pretty well knows how I'm going to fall on things. I think having a different perspective will be good ultimately for the city as a whole. And so I'm happy to be considered, but I would throw my support behind this lovely lady and be there as a support for anything that she needs.
How much time, how long is this gonna go? How long is this planning session gonna be?
So that's the next thing. So we'll talk about it right now. My thought is to have it every 2 weeks and we can judge it by then. At least initially, because there's a lot of stuff that I had. And Doug is an example too, 4 pages of questions that, you know, you get to a certain point, you hit a snag, you know, and at the same time, you don't want to be calling city staff every 5 minutes to say, what is this? What is it? So, you know, in 2 weeks, I think everybody can get through all of the documentation and get a line of questions. So that, you know, 2 hours tops is the goal. And if we need to do it, and this is all you guys' thoughts, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, whatever, dates and times, totally up to you. I'm not, you know.
Yeah, what's the deadline though for being
Oh.
completed?
So here, yeah, that's the next thing. Good, it's good needed. So the budget committee schedule, I don't know if you have that, but it's basically, and I'll talk this out loud because nobody can see what I'm pointing to, but March 26th is budget highlights, reviews, priorities, future plan. April 9th is enterprise fund. So these are when they're kind of, we need to set stuff. So, and then the city council has to approve a tentative budget May 14th. And so before that date, and I kind of highlighted that, is when really, you know, this committee has to have something and say, hey, you know, because by then, if the tentative budget is done, you know, they're not gonna get much attention. So, and I think I emailed everybody what the previous committee had said, and that's a good, you know, jump off point if you're like, well, what about this? Oh, I already did that. You know, so definitely review that as well. So that's, you say deadline, that's kind of the thing is to have a out brief no later than early May is what I would shoot for. So if today's the 7th of February and start looking at a calendar, it starts chipping away pretty quick.
Where can I find that, Chris, to put in the notes? Is
This?
that in anything?
It's the minutes from that. meeting,
Yeah, it's
that
the
council
same meeting, it's, yeah, she's got it right there. Yeah, go.
So when and where, what days and who's
Hold on.
chair?
Brett, yeah, Brett, say one thing, go ahead.
Okay, I think, first of all, I volunteer not to be chair. But, there are expertise here that go, you know, some of us have, like I say, we've got expertise all the way to federal government budgets and state budgets, but what a great resource that's around this table. But I was a little concerned, and forgive me, but when you said that I don't want to have growth, that scares me to death.
Oh, I didn't
because-
mean to say I didn't say that. I said, what does the city think of growth? Is what I think I asked.
No,
Well, I think she was talking about the fact that.
With
Yeah.
this support, you say you don't want that growth. That's one of the biggest detriments to states that do that. Because we have the opportunity in Utah, and you probably know Utah as well as I do. We have some of the largest per capita family in anywhere in the nation. I don't want to do what California does. They restrict growth and they do a lot of commercial, and it turns into California with deficit spending. I want to see a place for my kids and my grandkids to grow up in Utah. And if that means that North Ogden has to accept their portion of the growth, I think that's super. Because I lived in Washington Terrace for 40 years. And now I've chosen North Ogden, but if somebody else wants to come and live in North Ogden, I'd welcome them with open arms. I think growth is a stimulus because it gives us diversity, it gives us new voices, and it gives us a greater perspective on what we all need to do. And if you're okay with that, then I'm gonna support you 100%. But if you've decided that I'm here and we're gonna close the gate, then I'm not there.
I didn't say that.
Okay, because I've dealt with that.
Well,
But then
that's-
again, I haven't said I want to be chairman for that reason. I think, you know, it's an education process.
It is.
It
Oh, right.
really is.
But I think the responsibility of the chairman in this instant is more of leading the discussion and understanding the budget process at a higher level, and I think you do, and I had texted a couple people and I thought about it, and I said, you know, Cindy's probably the person, but I'm not gonna drop that on there until the meeting. But if you don't think that this is all,
I'm happy to do that, but I will need help.
yes, and that's what I was gonna
You know,
say. Is the whole thing is I will support you and slowly wean away and
because there's a
sit next
lot
to
of
the
people
mayor.
here that can do it, you know?
yes. But I think from the standpoint of knowing how to delegate is.
Rather have to add something to you here. So, I'll not be, I'm only in the so. You're also the mayor. and I-
Yes, Mayor.
I think your point is well taken, but I think what people fail to do is welcome all, but they don't think about what I call soft infrastructure. Is where you're gonna get the snow plows to
That's correct.
all these streets, how you gonna maintain these streets, how are you gonna get more officers? And the state is very famous for raising their hand and saying, we're cutting taxes. And they put the burden back on the cities. Then we have to increase taxes and fees. So I'm good with planned growth. But I think part of the input you could give is, okay, how are we going to keep up with that? Because I believe you've got to have infrastructure in place before growth.
That's
because
correct.
Once growth comes, you never catch up.
That's,
And so that's part of our budgeting process. We know we're gonna grow because of property rights. But how are we gonna fund that growth? Because Bill pointed this out. An average house, let's say if it's $400,000 in this city, it's 500. Let's say we get $400 of property tax. It takes 250 homes and you have 1,000 more in population. And you just got maybe $75,000 to $100,000. It costs $140,000 to put an officer on the street. Where's that coming from?
That's what,
And
that's what
clouds-
I'm saying.
Yeah,
And let me
as long
tell you
as we can
something.
figure out soft infrastructure like water,
Yeah,
because Bill knows we've got 2 wells sitting out there uncapped. I mean, without pump houses or capped wells. We just had to put, what was it, ended up, John, 3 million for the water tank? 3
Yeah.
point,
3.4? 8?
if we wouldn't have had ARPA funds. And we had to put that tank in because we didn't meet the entitlement for fire protection in that part of the city.
I know that.
So all this, I would just say, when you're looking at this, keep those things in mind as you make recommendations on how to budget for the city. That's just,
Well, and Mayor, I agree totally, and I might just, a little bit of a warning here. We have watched the legislature in Utah change dramatically in the last 5 years. It has gone from a little bit moderate, but very conscious of funds and taxes and all those things to where it's now to the point where we're running bills that cities can never raise their taxes for any reason ever. And it's gone so far that even, I was there 16 years, you know, and as a majority leader, I had 84 Republicans that I supervised. But it's changed. And it's changed so dramatically that it scares me for cities, small cities like North Ogden. And with firsthand knowledge right now, I know you belong to the League of Cities and Towns. But understand that North Ogden is not on the top of their list when they talk about cities in Utah. So you're sort of struggling with a tier of cities that it makes it so important you're doing just exactly what you just said. And I just want to make sure that it's, if there's, and I hope there is growth for North Ogden, but I hope it's planned for and done correctly. So when you put, as you have done, when I built my house up there, there was a sewer out in the street and there was water and there was all those things and I have fire protection. Almost thought I was gonna have to sprinkle the house. But you handled that, so we didn't. So the growth is there with this particular city council and you as mayor, I applaud that. You're doing really well. But I don't want to see us say, we're gonna now get to the point where we don't want anybody here and we want to close the things and it's going to be only North Ogden and we're not going to look for our neighbors and others.
yeah, but yeah, you just have to budget for it and
Yep.
understand the, you know, the growth situation there. And the other thing you should understand is I think we're getting pretty caught up. But John, Dave, what's the average age of our snowplows? The ones that haven't broke down and burned out.
between 15 and 20 years old.
You know, because hey.
And how much is in your snowplow?
About,
250, isn't it?
no, about 400.
Yeah, 350, 400.
For a week. So I want to be critical here, but for a number of years. Council raised their hand and says, oh, we've never increased property taxes for 17 years. Well, you know how they did that?
Yeah, kick the can down the road. So you have to.
Well, thankfully, you know, Phil and others started seeing that and starting to make those changes, but it's really hard to catch up when you get behind.
Yeah.
It's extremely.
Okay, Brenda, you said,
I just have a couple of opinions here and I may be invited not to come back after I voice them, and that's fine. First of all, I am glad that this budget committee did not have these kind of requirements last year, or I would not have been on this committee. I am a homemaker. I don't have budget experience. I feel like you're really limiting people, saying that they have to have these kind of experiences to be the chairman. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. I think if people wanted to be on this committee, if they are a homemaker, they should have as much right as anybody else. And I also think that this committee needs to understand they are not in charge of anything. They look at the budget, they make suggestions, and everything is up to the city council. You make your suggestion. We had several suggestions last year. Some we agreed on, some we didn't. Some were simple, some were very involved. But I'm afraid you've set up this committee, at least for me, if I was filling on this committee, I would think, oh, I don't have the right to have an opinion. I can't make any comments. I don't know anything about that because I don't have the education that you guys are talking about. And I am sorry, I do not think that that is how you want to come across to the citizens of this city. And if they're gonna look at the YouTube and all this kind of stuff, they're not gonna understand this committee any more than they understand the council. And I'm sorry, but I thought that was part of what this committee was for.
You're 100% correct, and I think the key thing for what we were talking about is for the chair itself was to understand some of these things. Now, and I think somebody was saying that the input from people that are, yes, that I know my home budget, that's what I know. And I know how to do that. That's to me, the only implication on this whole thing. The only qualification, in my opinion. In fact, you don't even need that.
That's not
So-
been the direction of your meeting so far, and it's very intimidating to me. I'm glad I'm not on this committee. But I think you might be setting yourself up if you're gonna continue this committee next year, that people are gonna think, oh, I've gotta have what do you have, Jamie?
Masters in accounting.
An accounting degree in order to be on this committee. And my understanding, I did this last year, and maybe your intent is different, because I wanted to understand the committee. I wanted to be able to tell my next door neighbor why we're spending
Yeah.
$1 million on this thing.
And that's still the goal. So that hasn't changed.
Then I think you need to back off of the educational talk. You need to make it, and talking about layman's terms, you need to talk about things that everybody will understand who's going to listen to this. I had another thought, but my other thought is your committee chairman needs to have the guts to say to someone, that is not what we're discussing today. We're not talking about state taxes today. We are talking about our swimming pool taxes. Because you're never gonna get anything accomplished if you don't. I'm done.
Okay. No,
Sorry.
that's, to be honest, that's when somebody's like, oh, we don't need last year's people, I'm like, no, I want Brenda. So to be perfectly honest, it wasn't. I picked you for a reason. And
Because I'm mouthy, I know.
well, no, because you have a very specific,
So
you
who
let
is on
people,
the committee that can be the chairman? I guess my question
well,
is,
honestly, we'll give it to Brenda and she can
it's
get
fine with me.
it. Seriously, man, just for a
I
split
would
second, I'm
be the
being.
chairperson. I've been the chairperson of a community committee and I mean, I don't have the budget experience anybody has here.
You
but I-
have budget experience.
Yeah, that's
You can
what
help.
I've watched
It
and
doesn't
I've
have
been
to be-
involved in the city for many years and watched the budget process. I was thinking I shouldn't do it because I've already had the opportunity to be the chair of the general plan steering committee, but
It shouldn't be
I
that
can
hard
do
to
that.
pick a
I have no
chairman. If there's
problem
somebody
reining
here that
people
wants to
in.
do it, do it.
I was real close. Brenda got me, but I was real close to going, we need a chairperson. That's what we're discussing.
Okay. Steph
Me
is-
too, that's why I had my hand up. We
Okay.
need somebody who's gonna keep us on track
I think that's.
and has a strong enough personality to keep.
So
people
I'd be
focused.
happy to do that.
Nose goes.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Third, fourth.
Okay,
Thank you.
yes.
It's a lot of work.
It is. That's why I said I've done it. I've been there. It wasn't what I wanted to do, but I'm happy to do it. I will
We're
do
happy
it
to
and
help.
I will. Yes, I can do the keep on track. Let's have a plan. This is what we're discussing.
I will do the behind the scenes, so you don't have to do any of that. It's basically the meeting and
Yes.
running it that that's.
Okay.
So. Okay,
What time are your meetings gonna be?
Thank you.
that's the next thing. Is Wednesdays at 3 o'clock good for everybody? I mean, I picked a day off the top of my head. It could be Saturday at 2 if you want. I don't honestly care. I know.
Wednesday at 3 works. It's
I can make it.
something I can make work as well. I prefer later, but
That may, yeah, I mean, if we pick a different
It's-
day, then you don't know, but
we've
yeah.
got all of us but one who made it to this
And she
date
can make it
time,
work.
so we can all do this every 2 weeks. We'll be good.
My schedule's very open with being an airline pilot, so.
I figured we'll just enjoy you when you're here.
If that's okay. I'll do my best. Is it possible for me to join via Zoom? I
That's
see.
what-
That's what I
can do
asked
that.
earlier.
37,000 feet.
Shh. Don't ask that question, Jill.
We can watch it on YouTube afterward.
Yeah,
Right.
it's- so
We'll find it.
21st of February. Am I doing that right? Am I doing the calculations right? in my head?
Okay, so I can put this in the minutes. We will be meeting every other, I can work up a thing and put it in here with the dates. So everybody can look at that when they're doing long range planning.
Okay,
And airdrop and pictures.
Yep.
and then,
That right? Okay.
so what, I guess for the next meeting, and this is the last topic, and then we can stop, is the, I mean, at least for the 8, I mean, there's lots of homework for you. Do you have an ideas for, when you're talking long range stuff, the one that has the multiple years on it from the one council meeting, is that something that would be also welcome to send to everybody? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't.
Okay.
What do you mean, the one that has
The budget has multiple years.
Yeah, the multiple year budget. Okay, so that's probably something that we'll send out as well.
So can you give us a list of homework so we know what we're looking at, so we can be prepared?
Great
So-
idea.
I would say the current year budget, maybe past years if you want, but usually it has both years in the same document. Plus the financial statement, which
I can
it,
just send the link in an email
Yeah.
as well. We can just very easily send the link in an email.
but, and then this other, I mean, obviously the briefing from last year, which I sent already.
You can.
And
Are
then
there any policies or procedures on budget preparation that we need to know?
I wouldn't worry about that. Honestly, the other thing would be this multi-year, just kind of glancing through it. I mean, I've been writing it up and ripping stuff apart. So that's,
And that's a multi-year budget?
yeah, it's just that kind of projections of what they're trying to do and figure out for the coming years. I mean, honestly, I've had all of these pages out on the floor trying to look at things and obviously you have to look at the budget. So it's an interesting,
So do you have definitions on all these funds somewhere?
So there's a video, I think, that we can send out a link. There's a video, I can't remember if it's the league that puts it on or if it's.
I think it is the league.
It is the
Yeah.
league that actually goes through the budget process. It's just a short video. It'll talk about all the
Talk about the
terminology of that.
Did you get that out?
So
Yeah.
we talked about the budget, the process. We've got a chair. How do you see us doing this? Are we going to take? I know you said you didn't want departments here and breaking it down. How do you see
no,
us?
we can do that. I didn't say,
Okay,
I just,
well, I
didn't- I just
meant,
didn't want to go spend 45.
yeah, no,
hours.
and that's, but so how do you see us doing this? So like the next meeting, are we taking this portion of the budget and going over that? So that it's bite size and that I'm not sure.
I think
Great question.
there's
What
two
we're-
parts that do, in my opinion, there's two parts of the next meeting. One big one is questions. You're gonna go through all the stuff and go, what the
Okay.
crap does this mean?
So just going
And then-
over basically
Basic things,
looking at the budget and,
and then the next part of that would be breaking down the big stuff into smaller stuff. So if the Parks Department is, some general, let's take the police, for example. I mean, what projection do you see for that? Another would be roads, hey,
okay, so,
Might be a good idea to do an agenda.
well, that's what I'm
That's what I
saying.
was just
So
gonna
the
say.
next meeting, we wanna have everyone take time and go over the upcoming budget. Kind of discuss what that looks like and answer questions, so we're understanding what we're looking at. And then we can maybe discuss the future meetings and how we want to break them down.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what we need to talk about is how we're gonna,
okay.
now,
I think,
who's responsible for the agenda? You?
I mean, I can, yeah, as
Yeah,
we
we'll
just,
figure it out.
and that's, I guess, what we can discuss
Just
at the
remember, you
next
don't have to
meeting
do it
if
all
we have the
yourself.
two things. Yeah,
There's
No, I-
stuff that's around it.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing is, if my job is gonna be just maybe poke and prod every once in a while to keep in the, but for the most part.
Okay.
I'm not gonna be, I don't wanna be part of the discussion, I don't wanna be the discussion.
okay.
Oh, I had another question. There are some new people here for me. Some of you I have contact information on.
Yep.
So,
That was the question, do you want to have, because emails I can send out, but the other thing is phone numbers, is that something that people want to exchange?
yeah,
So,
and how do you want your minutes? Do you want
no.
yeah, okay, so I'm gonna need to get emails.
Yep.
But
I'll
is
send it.
email the most efficient way for everybody in here to get information right away? I
No,
get
that's
so
fine.
many emails, but
That's what I'm saying, is that we can, I'll send out the email list. And if people want to individually send you the phone numbers, the people that want to, then we'll do that.
We learned in that training last night that city communication is supposed to be over email? Or
Right,
does that only
Yes.
pertain to the city council?
It's the official committees.
Yeah.
So this one is not,
Not official.
yeah,
We-
we're just a sub.
but
I mean, I'll be using, so if it comes from me, then it'll be tracked, so. If that makes sense.
Text messaging could be nothing more than just, hey, I sent out
Well-
the minutes, check your email.
Yeah,
but
that's
it,
good.
Just something that simple.
Okay,
it also, I mean, I do think that you should expect that you're talking about city business. And so your email should be grammar requestable.
Budgets, yeah.
I think we're all very aware of that.
Okay. Anything else before we motion to?
I'm excited.
We're good with
That's
those.
gonna be great.
I'm happy to meet you all.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you.